Hello, it's Richard here, just to tell you about the holiday that we just had in Malta. We stayed at the Paradise Bay Hotel, which is at the far northwest of the island, near the ferry port where you catch the ferry to Gozo. The rooms seem very spacious and very reasonably priced, although we did visit in December. The food was pretty good as well. We were on half board and you could eat as much as you like. One thing to watch out for though, try and get a room on the south side of the hotel facing the swimming pool. The other side faces the road and can be a little noisy in the morning when the ferry comes in. On Sunday, after breakfast, we headed straight out from the hotel and headed east along the northern edge of a peninsula, planning to come back on the southern side of the same peninsula. Quite a nice day, really. Sunny with a bit of wind. We could see over to Camino, the island that lies between Malta and Gozo. Along the bay are a number of resorts and old abandoned defences. This is a rather gorgeous bus, one of the many Leyland vehicles on the island. And this appears to be the Subaru Owners Club. And then, a bit further down the coast, we came across this little fellow, a chameleon, I believe. We carried on east until we reached Arax Point and what is sometimes known as the Dragonara Cave. Then we headed southeast across the head of the peninsula until we reached an old chapel and a statue of the Madonna. Then we walked southwest back along the southern side of the same peninsula until we reached the Red Tower, sometimes known as St. Agatha's Tower, built in the 17th century by the Knights of St. John. At this point I headed down the hill to the Gadira Nature Reserve. Not a lot of birds, but I believe this is a young flamingo. And this is a chiffchaff. And this is a pied wagtail, just like the one in the car park back at work. Although this one seems to have lost quite a lot of its tail feathers. A pair of collared doves. And this, I think, is a young moorhen. Young because it doesn't appear to have any red on its beak. And then catch the bus back to the hotel just in time to catch the sunset. Monday was a little bit gloomy, even some rain, but undaunted, we caught the ferry to Gozo from the nearby ferry port. Look, that's our hotel there. And there's another ferry coming back from Gozo. Eventually we arrived at the ferry port, Magar, and caught a bus to the capital, Victoria. Here we are at Independence Square, not far from the citadel. Here's Clive in front of Gozo Cathedral. If you go up onto the roof of the citadel, you can see for miles around in just about every direction. The inside of the cathedral is definitely worth a visit. Then I went for a wander around the streets of Victoria. This is the citadel seen from a distance. Just time for a quick snack in the Villa Rundle Gardens and an even quicker photo before heading south. This is the Church of St. Margaret in Sanat. This is the Church of St. John the Baptist. The first stone was laid in 1952 and it was consecrated in 1978. The previous church remained intact inside the new building and was only dismantled once it was complete. These are the Tarsenk Cliffs south of Sanat. Then, as the light faded, we walked back to the ferry port, catching a bus for the last mile or so. Today we decided to visit Medina, the old capital city of Malta. This involved 2 bus journeys with a change at Bourguiba. I headed off to St. Paul's Cathedral. Across the road is the Cathedral Museum, which is certainly worth a visit. A slight resemblance, perhaps? Then we visited the St. Paul's Catacombs underneath the streets of Medina. We then headed south to the cliffs at Dingley and watched the sun go down. We then returned to the hotel via various buses, all of which seemed to be crowded and late. Today we decided to go back to Gozo, taking the ferry as we had before. Here we are arriving at Magar ferry port. We headed over to the west coast of the island to the location of the Azure Window. If you are a Game of Thrones fan, you may recognise this from season 1, but as Clive demonstrates, it is no longer there. It fell into the water in March 2017. This is the nearby Duera Tower, built in 1652 to look out for pirates. Also nearby is Duera Bay, with Fungus Rock on the right of the picture. We walked south along the coast and round the southwest corner of the island. This is a Maltese green lizard. I believe this is a Muscovy duck. Eventually, a non-existent path and a precipitous climb down led us to Slendy Bay. Just in time for a quick drink, a bus back to the ferry and home to the hotel. On Thursday, we decided to visit Valletta, a long bus trip away to the other end of the island. The bus dropped us off near Valletta City Gate. Here we are in Castile Place, and that's the Auberge de Castile. Next stop, St. John's Co-Cathedral, which is pretty ornate, Unfortunately, the museum was shut, but we couldn't get a discount. Then we went for a wander around Valletta, heading west until we reached the water, and then north towards Fort St. Elmo. In 1551 the Turkish fleet sailed into the harbour unopposed. In response to this, St. Elmo's fort was built. It now contains an interesting exhibition about the history of Malta, but it's not terribly photogenic. After that, we walked round the eastern side of Valletta, caught the ferry over to the Grand Harbour Marina, and explored briefly what was over there. That just left a long and very crowded bus trip back to the hotel, but at least I got a seat this time. Today we decided to go to Camino. Camino is a little island that lies between Malta and Gozo. To do this we took a little ferry, which looks like this, and is rather smaller than the Gozo ferry, which looks like this. That's Magar Ferryport on Gozo. We docked at the Blue Lagoon on Camino and walked clockwise around the island until we reached the Camino Hotel, which I think may now be closed. We even managed to see some rare and unusual birds that had somehow managed to escape the hunters. As we continued around the northeast of the island, the terrain began to get somewhat more rocky. This is the Santa Maria Tower, built in 1618 to defend ships travelling between Malta and Gozo from Barbary corsairs. And this is an abandoned cholera isolation hospital dating back to 1912. We caught the ferry back to Malta just in time. Then we caught the bus to the Popeye village. The entire village was built as a stage set for the 1980 Popeye movie, directed by Robert Altman and starring Robin Williams and Shelley Duvall. It is still a popular tourist attraction. However, we have no time for such frivolities, so we walked south down the west coast of the island, passing a number of towers on the way, and we were eventually rewarded with a fairly impressive sunset. Eventually we arrived at Golden Bay, where we had time for a drink before catching our bus back. This is the Radisson Blu Hotel. This masterpiece was in the hotel lobby. Not a lot of time to play with today, so we headed for the village of Magar. This is the snappily titled Church of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary into Heaven. These are the Tahajrat megalithic temples. And these are the Skorba temples just up the road. There are also some Roman baths nearby, but the presentation was a bit lacking. No matter, we headed off for the coast, eventually reaching the Tar Lipia Tower. From there we headed north along the coast, past a series of delightful bays and cliffs, before eventually reaching Golden Bay, from where we caught a bus most of the way back to the hotel. And that just left us with a little bit of last minute packing, a trip on the shuttle bus, and the plane back to Newcastle.